Sponsored in part by 4-Wheel Campers, freedom on 4 wheels. On this episode of Project Big Red K10.
But there's a big difference before and after.
I removed the bed liner to access the truck bed bolts and found lots of golf ball sized dents in the floor of the bed, along with some minor collapsing and creasing between the bed frame sills. There were also dents in the fender tubs and some holes that needed welding. Since I wasn't sure I'd be able to pull this off, I decided to restore one half of the bed prior to filming using no bondo, spray can primer, and spray can truck bed coating for this initial restoration finish. A real side-by-side comparison is what I had hoped for. If it went well, I'd shoot a video restoring the other half. And here we are now.
I actually fixed this bed without removing the truck bed, and I made some space for myself underneath and made some custom tools to help me straighten all this out. If you're able to take your truck bed off, it would obviously be a lot easier. So let me show you how I did all this. If you're familiar with auto body work, you can see I have dollies and hammers typically used doing that kind of work. Some pry bars here, ball peen hammer here, small one, and then just a regular carpenter's hammer. This is a piece of steel that I used as a backing to set up here if I'm hitting a dent from underneath. I came up with a few unique tools to help speed things up a bit. The first is this jack here. What I did is I took a basic scissor jack I bought from Harbor Freight, used some scrap wood here and a 2x4. These are 1/4-inch steel bars, 1.5 inches wide. And there's a couple different lengths here. The reason why I have these is, if you can see here where it's collapsed, it's about 7 inches here between frame sills, and then you have another one that's 5 inches, and then from that point on they go 10 inches. So this is 7 inches here, this is 5 inches here, and these are set basically to extend the full width underneath so that I can push up and set these on this jack and push up on the truck bed and lift those dents out and lift that collapsed floor up on the truck bed. I had measured these, and it turns out that they are 1.5 inches wide, so you can see here. So it was perfect. I picked this steel bar up from Home Depot. It was like 3 foot long, and I just cut these into the right length and then deburred the ends so they wouldn't leave a mark when I was pressing up. I don't drill a hole in these and mount it to this 2x4 because it'll leave the impression of that hole if I'm pressing up with the jack. And I'm going to show you how this all works. Okay, here we are under the truck bed towards the rear. Got my son Kobe here helping me. And this is the jack. You can see it here. We've got it jacked up to the point where it's pressing this plate lightly up against underneath the truck bed. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up top, and we're going to film the dent coming up as my son raises this jack up to push out the dent. A lot of the dent has come out. It's pushed up, and it's helped push up these sides as well. So now I can come with my flat hammer here The other very handy tool I made here is this wedge. It's very crude. I just welded it together. And you can see here I kind of tapered the end up rounded and tapered it. And what this is for is, there's certain areas where the frame seam runs across and this raised part of the bed got dented in, like you can see right here. So I can't press up underneath or hammer this out in here because you can see the frame sill is in the way. Turns out that this is a 1/4 inch gap it's supposed to be when these are not dented in. Just hammer this in from underneath, takes out the dent, and then it's a little difficult, but I have to hammer it back out, tap it back out, and that's how I get the dents out that way. And I'll show you how this works as well from underneath. Okay, so here's the wedge. So we're gonna try and repair that dent that's sitting over this frame sill. So we just tap it in. Okay, let's go back up top now and look at that dent. Okay, here we go. This is now after we used the jack to press this up with a plate, and I also used the wedge and drove it in here and drove out the dent here as well. You can see now this is pretty darn flat. There's a little bit of a crease here, but it's very shallow. Couple coats of filler primer after I take all of this old paint off should fill those in. This also helped lift up the floor a bit, the collapsed floor in these channels as well. So I'm going to go through now and press up each of these and hammer them out a bit and try to smooth this all out, and then follow up with the rest of the dents on this bed as well, and then we'll move on to the next step. I picked this up at Home Depot. It's a paint stripping tool. This thing works awesome. You can also use it on like a cordless tool. I'm using it on air because it's faster RPM and it's a lot of work, so I want this to go faster. One thing you want to definitely be careful. This thing will take your skin off your fingers down to the bone if you hit it hard enough. And pieces come off of this, so you definitely want to wear eye or face protection as well. But this works fantastic for removing paint. Alright everyone, here's the bed paint stripped down. I went ahead and sanded the wheel tub. Didn't take it down to all the bare metal. All this paint will add a little extra protection. The seams look really good. They were sealed with like a seam sealer, and everything looked good except up here it was really bad, old, and breaking apart. I went ahead and purchased some seam sealer, and as you can see I did a terrible messy job. I had started to try and lay it down like this and messed up. I started messing with it, and then that's what I ended up with. But that's okay, because when I peeled off the tape, it peeled off paint with it. There's bare metal here, as well as up here. So I'm gonna have to go ahead and sand this and spray this as well. I forgot to mention one thing, and this was the same on the other side as well. There's a couple of spot welds that popped here. So I'm gonna need to weld these up. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to seal all the cracks and holes in case there's a camper shell on this. We don't want fumes or dust coming up through the floorboard. And there's natural drain vents here, so I might have to make a rubber stopper for these and plug these up. Gonna weld these spot welds up now. There's a couple small holes. I might weld those up. And I'm looking over here on these beams here. You can see that there's a massive hole there that's been ripped open. There's also one over here. Paint's coming up over here. Probably see it down there. So I might just go ahead and take that paper off on that side, sand all of this, give it a quick prime, coat it with the truck bed coating as well. You can see there's rust along this edge. I might as well address this now.
All right, patch panel is welded in, grinded down, and smoothed out. Turned out pretty good. Now I'm gonna move on to this one over here.
I cut out most of that split hole. There's a few cracks that run. Might tack weld those and then weld a patch in.
I set aside the camera for a bit, tackled a bunch of work sanding and priming the walls and headboard as you see here. I then ditched the camera again to put all my focus on getting the prep work finished up so I could spray the truck bed coating.
I've primered this, done some fill primer. I've been block sanding the top of these rails on both sides actually. I went back on the side that I had already sprayed with the bed liner and found that this stuff is hand sandable. So I'm gonna go ahead, finish up. I'm going to do one last coat of primer on everything here. You can see I had sprayed some black bed liner here already, a first coat, but there were some mistakes I made because I did it late in the night and I couldn't see, and this stuff will run. So I'm gonna go ahead and do another coat on that, clean it up, and then spray this all as well, and then overlay everything, and it should come out looking good, hopefully. Just to review what I'm using on this truck bed, it's all over the counter stuff. To start off with, I used a little bit of rust reformer anywhere that there was some rust. I did end up sanding or Scotch-Briting that off, but I followed up with this just in case. Just regular Rustoleum automotive primer to coat bare metal. All the bare metal here and underneath this, everywhere, I coated with this primer. Anywhere that was uneven, like the tops of these rails where there are still some shallow dents, or anywhere else, I use this filler primer. This stuff works pretty good. And then finally, I'm using Rustoleum's truck bed coating here as the final black coating you see there. This is not the most economical way to do your truck bed. It was just the easiest for me right now. Also, I'm doing this just for this initial restoration. I plan to follow up with a commercial grade bed liner spray on this once I'm all done restoring this truck. If you do plan on using this Rustoleum truck bed coating, again, remember it's for kind of lightweight use. When spraying on this flat, you can spray to a gloss just like any other paint. If you spray it vertically here, it will run. So what I suggest doing is just doing very light coats like this. Just nice and easy. And let this tack up so that the next coat has something to stick to. And you keep doing that. You don't really want to spray to a gloss on a vertical panel like this. It'll start to run and it'll show up. This stuff isn't thick enough to hide runs, even chips and paint. I had to go back and do some sanding because it didn't really hide that. So just like this, just keep doing this. It'll start to even out. And let me go ahead and finish this up. You can see the bed I've sprayed over here. I think we can consider this project done and the truck bed restored. This restoration and refinishing project of this truck bed was a significant amount of work. It took me about a month, but I think it was worth it. It turned out great. It's gonna make a great future home for a camper. I learned a ton, and that's gonna help me on other work that I need to do on this truck. There's lots to do. There's lots of episodes coming, so stay tuned and follow Big Red K10 or subscribe to Savage Camper. Look forward to seeing you soon.